This is how I went from making $15,000 a year back in 2017 to now being worth over $6.5 million in 5 years. Here are the lessons that I learned along the way to help me get to this point and how you can get there too. I was born and raised in Utah, but my parents immigrated to the US from South Korea in 1985 with next to nothing. My parents worked 14 to 16-hour days, 6 days a week to provide for our family. They operated a small business, but only because they had no other choice. Seeing them grind to provide for our family was ingrained into my mind at an early age. They were never able to show up to my baseball or basketball games because they had to work. And because of that, I resented them at a young age because I would see all my other teammates' parents at the games and I always wondered why they never showed up. And only later did I realize it was because they were working to provide for us and not because they didn't want to. And that honestly broke my heart as I started to realize that. I vowed to myself that my future kids would never have to go through the heartache that I went through. And because my parents only made enough just to get by, I grew up with the fear of spending money. My whole life we were told to save, save, save. And this conditioned me to think of money as a finite resource, and the scarcity mindset was drilled into my head. My parents wanted me to get a good education and work my way up the corporate ladder because that was the American dream in their mind. Education was by far the most important thing to my parents. With the little money that they had, they made sure to always enroll me and my brothers in private school at a young age. They made sure we had tutors, especially for the ACT exams. They believed if we got a good education that would lead to financial success. I remember there was nothing that I despised more than studying and trying to get the highest possible score on those tests. There was always someone smarter than me, and while I was struggling to understand some of the concepts, they were excelling. I was convinced that the only way to become successful was to get good grades and then go to a good university. Throughout school, I got pretty good grades and I felt like I was doing great. My goal was to get into Harvard, Yale, or one of the Ivy League schools, and that would finally make my parents proud. Fast forward to my senior year in high school, and I quickly realized that my ACT scores and grades were not nearly good enough to be even considered for any of those Ivy League schools. And it was a really low point in my life because in that moment, I realized that I wasn't smart enough to get into those schools. And for that, I felt like a complete failure. Throughout college, I was mainly just going through the motions because the classes and the different majors didn't really interest me. I was talking to my school counselor about what I should major in, and they told me that you should look into business. That sounded good enough, but they warned me that the business program was going to be difficult to get into, and I thought, I sleepwalked my way through high school, this will be easy. I took the prereq classes and got rejected into the program. And I thought, you know what, whatever, I didn't want to do that anyway. Applied to a different program, and again, I got rejected. So it was at this point that I really started to panic. I started second guessing myself about everything. I even remember thinking, I guess I'm going to be stuck working at McDonald's for the rest of my life. It was honestly one of the darkest points in my life. During college, I worked a couple of jobs so I could pay through school, but it wasn't much. One of my college friends told us about getting free pizza if we just listened to a presentation. Being a broke college student, I thought, why not? I'll just go get some free food. We get there and this restaurant is packed full of college kids. As I walk in, I see a big banner that says, how I made $50,000 in 3 months. And I remember literally laughing out loud at such a ridiculous statement. This kid gets up and he starts talking about how he made $50,000 going door to door selling pest control. I zoned out throughout the entire presentation and just brushed it off as a scam, but I did get a free dinner out of it. A few weeks go by and one of my roommate's cousins comes by as we were chilling in our apartment, and he started talking to us about how much money he had made last summer doing door to door sales. And because this was someone that we knew, all our ears perked up. And I thought maybe this isn't a scam, so we heard him out. By the end of the conversation, me and my other roommates were all signed up to go out and sell pest control the following summer. Fast forward a few months and all my roommates started to drop off one by one. Everyone had backed out at that point because their parents told them not to go or they got cold feet, so I was thinking, if my friends aren't going, then I'm not going to go either. It was a couple weeks before final exams and I was at the gym trying to figure out what I was going to do this upcoming summer. Then I met a friend at the gym that I hadn't seen in a while, and he asked me what I'm doing for the summer. He tells me that he's gonna go take a team to do door-to-door sales. Now by that point, I was thinking, this is the third time this has come up in the past 3 months. Why is everyone going out to sell pest control? I told him that I wasn't interested, but he kept persisting. He wasn't going to take no for an answer, and he was going to pay me a bigger commission and had already recruited another kid that I knew. So I thought, well, I have no other plans, so if this turns out to be a scam, I guess I just wasted a summer. So that summer was one of the hardest, but one of the most rewarding few months of my life, and it was the turning point in my financial life. I was given a book on the sales process, so I remember getting obsessed and started to take it really seriously. Sure, it might be a scam, but I'm going to be giving it my all to see if this is legit or not. So I practiced every day, all day for a few weeks, and it was a huge struggle at first, and I started to doubt myself pretty heavily. The first day knocking was incredibly nerve-wracking, and I had been working for over 10 hours and had a big fat 0 sales up to that point. The other guys were done selling for that day and all of them had a few sales. They were on their way to pick me up and I told them that I'm going to finish knocking this last street and I'll be done. And the last house that I knocked, I kid you not, I pitched the guy and I finally got my first sale. It was one of the best feelings I've ever had. From that point on, I had a mindset shift that I started to believe that I could do it. Each day I got better and better and ended up making more and more sales. And by the end of the summer, I was the top rookie salesman in the entire company. This was really the turning point for me because up to that point, I didn't think that I was good enough to amount to anything. I was getting rejected from all the programs at school, but the fact that I just made $50,000 in 2.5 months proved to me that I'm capable of anything if I put my mind to it. It was such a huge confidence boost in all aspects of my life. Each summer after that, I would go out and sell pest control door to door throughout college. The next summer I went out and I doubled my salary to $100,000. And then the year after that, I did similar numbers as well and I was on a roll. I felt like I was invincible and that nothing could stop me, but I was in for a rude awakening. In 2017, I got married and had just graduated from college with a business degree. I'd gone a few job interviews and finally decided on a company that I was going to work for afterwards. So I moved to Idaho while my wife finished up school, and I decided that I was going to keep doing door-to-door sales. I mean, I was good at it, and why not make another 6 figures while I wait for her niche? I went out with all the confidence in the world, but for some reason, as I started to knock, I started to get rejected more and more and get less sales. I thought it was just a fluke, but the same thing happened the next day, and then the next, and then the next, and then so on. I started getting really discouraged because I was only making 1/10 of what I used to make. I had lost momentum, and it was one of the worst feelings in the world. On top of all this, I had just gotten married, and I was supposed to provide for our family, and the feelings of failure and that I'm not good enough to support us started to creep back in. I only made about $15,000 that entire year after making over 6 figures the year before and the year before that. Needless to say, it was a crappy feeling, and I had to get over that funk. So after my wife graduated, we moved back to Utah and started our first jobs out of college. My first real job out of college, I distinctly remember when I first started, I was sitting in the office and I looked around and saw that most people seemed happy to be there. Now that's usually a good thing, right? But it was the opposite for me. I started thinking, why are these people happy to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, just praying for the weekend so they could spend 2 days of fun to do this all over again? That was a wake-up call for me that I did not want to be doing this for the next 40 years of my life. I remember after a few months just getting comfortable with that lifestyle and dreading every Sunday because that meant I had to do another 5 days of work. I remember I would go to work, come home, maybe watch a few shows because that was all the energy that I had, and then I went to bed. I felt there was so much more to life than just slaving away at a job that I didn't like. I hated the fact that I had to ask my boss for time off, and even if I was allowed to get time off, then I knew that would hurt my chances of a promotion in the future. I just didn't feel like I had control of my financial future, and I knew I had to make a change. And on top of all the stress from work, I didn't make as much money as I thought I would, so we had to move back into my parents' basement. We really struggled during this time because my wife absolutely hated it. We didn't have a lot of money and she had $20,000 in student loan debt, and this put a lot of stress on our marriage. The feelings of me feeling like a failure started to creep back in because I didn't have enough money to buy a home for my wife, and I felt like a loser a lot of the time because I was living with my parents as well. It was during this time that I knew I needed to make a change, so I started to research different ways to make money. There are so many different things that I wanted to try, so I started day trading, wanted to start my own clothing brand, and also e-commerce and so on. Now, none of these stuck, and I ended up failing on pretty much all these businesses. It was around this time that my cousin had just moved back to Utah, and he told me that he was getting into real estate. I always heard of rich people getting into real estate, so I was definitely interested. He took me to some of these local events, and I never understood how getting into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt would ever make you rich. Because I was taught growing up that debt is bad and avoid it like the plague. So I brushed that idea off too. But anytime I had a horrible day at work, which was quite a lot, I started to research other ways to make money, and it kept coming back to real estate. I started listening to podcasts, YouTube videos, and attending real estate events, and the conversations with my cousin started to make more sense. I started to understand concepts like leverage, cash flow, appreciation, and all the different benefits of real estate. It was during these few months I was saving almost every dollar that I had for my new job, and although being in my parents' basement was rough, it was a silver lining because this allowed me and my wife to save up just enough money for a down payment. I heard of the strategy called house hacking, where you live in one of the units and then rent out the rest. I was scrolling through Zillow and I saw a fourplex for sale that was listed on that very same day. I texted my agent right away that I wanted to go see it. So I rushed over on my lunch break and walked through it and wanted to put an offer in. We write up the offer, and a couple hours later, we get a text, your offer is accepted. Now, after we closed, we were literally getting paid a couple $100 to live in our house. And during that year, we saved up even more money to go get another property, and at that point, we were hooked. We moved out after a year and rented out our unit, and now we had a cash flowing asset. We started to scale our real estate portfolio from there, and we used creative strategies like the Burr method, but we weren't able to make real meaningful money with it. But that's because it required a lot of capital, but I was sure that real estate was a vehicle to give me to financial freedom. And fast forward about 3.5 years, and we had built a sizable rental portfolio of about 40 rental units that was paying us $6,000 a month in cash flow. Now, this is great and all, but we had just busted our butts for 3.5 years to get to $6,000 a month in cash flow, which was not nearly enough money for us to retire. And we thought there had to be a better way than this to get to financial freedom faster. This was the time that we started to look at other strategies. I was speaking to a few people about Airbnbs, and they were telling me that they were making several thousands of dollars in profit from each property. At first, I thought there's no way. The most I'm making from one of my traditional units is about $800 a month. But instead of being skeptical, I absorbed all the information like a sponge. I started to do a bunch of research. There was also this cool method called Airbnb arbitrage. It's where you reach out to landlords that are renting their homes and then asking for their permission to sublease their property. You then furnish the property that you don't own, and then you post it on Airbnb. In fact, we had an investor pitch us this model at one of our rental properties, which is where I initially got the idea from. So I called the landlord and pitched them Airbnb arbitrage, and we eventually got a lease signed. And I really like this model because I didn't need a huge down payment to make this model work. I put about $26,000 into this property for furniture and all the other expenses to get it up and running. We launched it, and the first month of being live, we made $15,509 for that month. And our take-home pay after all expenses was $9,000 in straight cash flow. I literally couldn't believe it. Around this time, my wife and I just had our first kid, and that completely turned our world around. We had taken calculated risks up until that point, but now I was even more cautious because it wasn't just me and my wife that I was looking out for. It was now this little child that I had to take care of as well. And this was also at the same time where it started getting to the point where my corporate job started to become way too much. And sure, the money was good, but the stress became too much, so I decided to quit. I was scared, excited, and nervous all at the same time. When I quit, we had one Airbnb up and running in our real estate portfolio. And although we were making enough to cover our expenses, I had no other choice but to make it work. Over the next several months, we decided to launch our second one, third one, and then our fourth Airbnb. And by that point, we were making $18,000 to $20,000 a month in cash flow. We had tripled our cash flow that took us 3.5 years to build in 7 months using this method. I started talking about it on my socials, and I got bombarded with questions from people asking me about what we do, if we can teach them how to do it, and so on. I would answer people's questions in my DMs and through my videos about what I do and would try to help as much as I could. Then my friends and family started asking about what I did, so I started to mentor them on how to do it as well. So I helped my family get some properties up and running, and they were cash flowing several thousands of dollars every single month. It was at this time that I got so many comments and DMs to start a coaching program that I finally decided to do it. And now we have a community of over 1,000 students learning this and cash flowing thousands of dollars and changing their lives. And shameless plug, if you want to attend my next free live event when I walk you through step by step how you can do this too, you can check the link in the description. We're currently on our 5th Airbnb going live soon, and our 6th one is closing here in another month or so. So after we get these properties live, we'll be making about $30,000 a month in cash flow. Now, it was at this point that I started to really fast track my success through my real estate, my Airbnb, social media, and my coaching business. And now all my businesses, my real estate, etc., I have a net worth of over $6.5 million in the span of 5 years. I come from an immigrant family that came to the US with nothing and had everything going against me to be successful, but I still made it work. And these are the 10 main takeaways that I hope you get from my story. Number 1 is value hard work. My parents worked hard to provide for me and my family, and they taught me the value of hard work. Number 2 is don't settle for a job that you hate. I realized early on that I didn't want to spend the next 40 years at a job that I hated. I had to take control of my financial future. Number 3 is take calculated risks. I took a chance and started investing in my real estate and other businesses, which led me to success and financial stability. Number 4, have a strong support system. My wife supported me through the ups and downs, which was a key factor in my success. Number 5, stay disciplined and focused. I stayed disciplined and focused on my goals, which helped me overcome the obstacles and reach my financial goals faster. Number 6, learn from your failures. I learned from my failures and used them as an opportunity for growth. Number 7, embrace change. I was open to change and wasn't afraid to pivot when necessary, which allowed me to keep growing and succeed. Number 8, surround yourself with like-minded people. I surrounded myself with like-minded individuals who encouraged me and helped me achieve my goals. Number 9, always have a growth mindset. I had a growth mindset and never stopped learning, which allowed me to continuously improve and reach new levels of success. Number 10, and the most important, is believe in yourself even when no one else does. I faced challenges and obstacles along the way, but I never gave up and always believed in myself. And this mindset got me to where I am today.